Hi, Internet. Today, I don't know. First, we're going to start with a Red Bull. Hi, Internet. You may know me from videos on graphtech.com/youtube.org. You might know me locally as that one guy in that band, Two Guys, that isn't Anthems. Or you might know me as 6 Show 4, which is what this channel is. Or you might know me as that guy around Vancouver that just points cameras at people at concerts. But either way, since we're all still in a lockdown and there's no venues that are open or shows that are happening, I'm going to talk to you about what I've learned in the past year or 2 or 3 or whatever of shooting live music. And the biggest reason why I'm making this video is because when I first started out and I was looking up tips and tricks to shoot in dark venues, shoot in low light, shooting concert photography, videography, and all that fun stuff, most of the videos that I found, their tips were kind of bullshit. They were either put more light in it, which, thanks tips, great, you know, because when I'm shooting a festival, they give a shit about if I need an extra light in there, so that doesn't work. Buy a Sony A7S or you know, a full frame camera. Well, those are like $2,000 or $3,000, but everyone on the internet's like, oh, they're super affordable. Yes, I know, for what they are capable of and what they can do, $2,000 to $3,000 is a steal. Buy this $3,000 thing. It's like, well, I'm broke, so fuck off. So I started shooting punk shows and concerts around Vancouver about 3.5. Actually, hold on. I can figure out. Wow. My YouTube page doesn't even come up when you Google it. I'm really bad at SEO. So I started shooting live music, venue shows, whatever you want to call it, August of 2018-ish. September? Late 2018. Am I doing a top 5? I don't know. I didn't really plan this video. My first tip is just start doing it. I started making videos with just like a $40 GoPro ripoff from a website that, I think this is before the popularity of like Alibaba or AliExpress or any of those, called banggood.com. But it was a GoPro ripoff and it was pretty okay. So I would shoot our band, was named American Space Monkey at the time. Then I wanted to up my game, so I did a bunch of research to try and find what's the cheapest camera that doesn't suck. And I came out with the EOS M. So this is Canon's mirrorless, tiny little, can I get a reflection of the sensor? Yeah, there you go. It's a tiny body. It's the size of like a point and shoot. You know, it was like $150 on Craigslist. Not only are you not putting a lot of money into it, if you start out and then 6 months down the line you're like, nah, this isn't for me, cameras are always useful, and this thing's so small you can fit it in your pocket. It's upgradable. You can load a third-party program called what's it called, Lighthouse? I can't remember what it's called. It's called this. It is a third-party software that allows you to kind of unlock some features in the camera, like focus peaking or zebra stuff. What that is it will kind of flicker and let you know which parts are in focus a lot easier than the stock features that are built into the camera. It's got a touch screen, so menus are pretty straightforward. It can shoot 24 frames, 60 frames, I think, as well, so you can kind of do some, not necessarily slow-mo, but slower mo. But the main thing I wanted it for was shooting 24 frames, so it looks cinematic, it to be small and compact. I bought Canon's 50mm prime lens. They're 1.8 aperture, meaning it can open up pretty wide and let a lot of light in, which is really useful for dingy, small, poorly lit punk shows. You need an adapter to put standard Canon lenses on there. I started out with just the Photodiox, whatever, regular adapter that goes from their tiny Canon camera lens to big boy regular Canon lens. Now, since it is it micro four thirds? Anyway, it's a smaller sensor, so there is a crop. So I'm not gonna go into the efforts of all the math because I don't want to and you don't really care. So since this is a 50mm lens, it essentially turns it into like an 85mm lens. So it's a bit more zoomed in and you lose a little light. Now, when you're shooting in very low light conditions and there's nothing you can do about it, that's a problem. So the thing that you're gonna wanna do is just crank up the ISO, but then it gets grainy and looks like shit. So this Canon lens is like $100. This adapter, $50, let's call it. You can get them for pretty cheap. A lot of the times you can find kits that come with the camera and the adapter. The camera itself, $100, $150. I've bought a number of different cages. So the cage essentially is just a metal frame with screw holes so that you can attach things like a microphone or a handle later down the line if you want to do some music videos and stuff, or just like promotional shots, corporate stuff, or interviews, blah, 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 blah. Attach things to it, and it makes it modular, and then you can put stuff on it. So I started out with this little guy, and this is a Boya BY-MM1. Again, did a lot of research to find the cheapest microphone that isn't garbage, and this was it. It was like on Amazon, brand new. I think they had like a sale, or like you get $20 off or something, and it was like $100. So if you're seeing a pattern here, it's that I'm broke, and I generally don't like to spend more than $100 on something unless I'm sure that I'm going to need it or keep it for a long time. This whole full rig, let's call it $400 altogether. This is what I shot, I would say, the first half of everything that's on my channel. That includes, so local Vancouver, you know, punk rock festivals. A bunch of local bands, a couple bigger festivals, a bunch of touring bands that came through. Even bands that you've heard of, and guitar players and music people that you've heard of, like Converge. Shibalba, Ken Mode, or Colin James, or I don't remember. Anyway, so this super cheap, tiny ass rig can be used to shoot, I don't know, professional bands. And you know how you do that? You ask them. That's it. You don't have to have a snazzy resume, or you don't have to edit a promo video for yourself. I mean, you can. If you want to do that, do it. If you're just starting out, you don't have that. So just ask. Message people on Instagram. Obviously, this info isn't going to come in handy for at least a couple years, you know, until they let us outside again. But if you see a band's coming through town, just message them. Just be like, yo, I see that you're coming through town. I shoot videos. Love to come down and film you guys. And if you just message them, most bands will just say yes and put you on the guest list. Maybe a +1, maybe some drink tickets. It's not that hard. Think about it. If you're in a band, if some random kid was just like, hey, I have a camera, can I point it at you during your show? You'd be like, yeah, sure, fuck, your name's on it. Yeah, you're doing a service for us, but it's not because you're a professional. You'll make them famous, and it's gonna be so valuable for them. So don't pull that shit. Don't try and tell them you're hot shit. Just tell them essentially, I own a camera, can I point it at you? Honestly, I've never been told no. And it's not because I'm amazing, I'm impressive, or I'm doing anything special. It's just because I asked. So, tip number 1, buy cheap shit that is good. So, do your research, find a cheap camera, then look at reviews, look at videos, and look at people who have used it and modified it. Because a lot of the cheap stuff is meh until you kind of modify it and build it up a bit. I've also loaded a picture profile, which is called CineStyle, onto this camera. So it's a more flat picture profile. So later when you're doing color correction and you're editing it in your editing software, you have a little more dynamic range to play with. Dynamic range just means the bright stuff has more information in it and the dark stuff has more information in it. So you have more information to play with and to actually pull out. So yeah, this microphone, it's great. It's cheap. It can take high sound pressure levels. That was a big thing. I know I've heard a lot. I haven't really been able to compare with any other brand, but apparently the preamps in Canon cameras are pretty weak. So this thing pumps out a lot of juice and can handle really loud sources. This, compared with the Rode equivalent, blows it out of the fucking water, and it's about a third the price. You don't always have the option to place yourself. Like, where you can fit is a lot of the times where you just have to fucking deal with it. Crammed in a corner right off the edge of a mosh pit, you have to film there, and you got to keep your elbow out the entire time. Later, I did upgrade my adapter to a speed booster. Now, what that does is, instead of just adapting, because it's going from a full frame lens, so a lens that is made for a much bigger sensor, to a smaller sensor, what a lot of companies have done is made a speed booster, which essentially is just an adapter with a magnifying glass in it. And what that does is, for the most part, negate that crop factor, or negate the size difference in the sensors. It's not exact or 100%, but it essentially makes it so that your lens is no longer sacrificing light and the amount of crop that the sensor is putting onto the image that's coming through the lens. So it turns, instead of a 1.8 lens, it lets in more light, so it's more like a 1.2 lens. So it lets in a lot more light and also allows you to have a much shallower depth of field. We'll talk about that in a bit later. I would show you the speed booster, but it's currently on the camera that I'm using. I did upgrade this camera, which is why I'm able to show you it. So, this was the first iteration of 604 cameras. The Canon EOS M. Just awesome, awesome workhorse camera. So, now we're going to talk about kind of more nuts and bolts, tips, tricks, and things that I've learned shooting in very, very poor lighting condition venues and concert halls and backyards and all that fun stuff. So, first, you're going to want a really fast lens. Is this going to be useless? No, you can see it. Look at me figuring out shit. This is going to be very rudimentary explanation. This is the aperture. So that's the amount, this is wide open, and when you close it down, it lets in less light. So this is a f2? f2.8? I don't know. Nobody really knows. This is a vintage Russian lens. This is like an f2. Some lenses would be at a, like a f4. It lets in that much light. And that's the difference of size. That's kind of a basic explanation of aperture. The larger the number, the less light is let in. So you like these lens caps? You like these stickers? It's my logo. You can't buy it, but maybe I'll put it on the internet somewhere. Maybe it'll be in the description. I don't know. I'll see if I can figure that out. I forgot I have shirts. Anyway, this entire video is shameless self-promotion. So, you're gonna want a really as fast as you can get it. Fast meaning as low a number as you can get it. The difficulty with that is faster lenses are generally pretty expensive, or can be really expensive, because they need more glass to allow more light in. If you think of a lens, there's usually like 5 or 6 different pieces of glass, and if you need them all to be bigger, they all need to be perfect, symmetrical, curved in the right ways, and spaced apart perfectly. So it's a lot of research and development, a lot of engineering and math things and smart people stuff. And that shit costs money. So that's why they're more expensive. Now, as far as ISO being the amount of digital brightening that you tell your camera to do. It just increases the gain or the volume of the brightness. That can bring in a lot of noise, meaning it makes your picture and video look like shit, because it's all like... I try not to go above 800 to 1000. A lot of people will tell you that there is a 180-degree shutter rule, which is how long the shutter is open to allow light in, which essentially, if you have a really slow shutter speed, you will let in more light, but because it's open for longer, if something's moving, it will see that movement for longer. So motion blur will increase. When you're filming bands, a lot of them run around and move really fast. So if there's a lot of motion blur, it gets a little jarring, looks shitty, and everything's just blurry. I personally do a lot of whip pans. It's kind of my thing. I just want to point it at the thing that's interesting. I want to kind of simulate actually being at a show. I don't want it to just be a static, what I think, boring shot of just like, here's a guy playing a guitar, and then here's a girl playing a guitar and singing. Isn't that cool? No. When you're at a show, you go like, whoa, whoa, that's moving. Whoa, 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 shit, that guy's drunk. Whoa, fuck, okay, that thing just flew up into the sky. Hey, that guy's got a beer bottle, now it's over there. That's kind of what I want to simulate. So I shoot at a faster shutter speed so that there's little to no motion blur, which also kind of makes things, I think, look cooler. This is a tip for bands. If you're playing a show, move a lot. It also makes bands look cooler because it makes seemingly small movements look way more intense because there's no motion blur, so it's like... If you ever watch the movie 28 Days Later, I don't know why that movie always sticks with me. There's a scene in the end where it's raining and the main guy, what's his name? Cillian Murphy, whatever. Anyway, you see his dong in like the first 30 seconds of the movie. Awesome movie. Can't recommend it more. But there's a scene in the end where he's running around fucking up a bunch of dudes and it's raining and they have the shutter speed cranked. So you can see each individual droplet of rain. Every time something moves, again, there's no motion blur, so you kind of feel uncomfortable because it's just very erratic, chaotic, but you can follow everything because it's not blurry. And anyway, that's what reminds me of really fast shutter speed stuff. So anyway, I shoot really fast shutter speeds so that all the motion looks really chaotic and it invokes catharsis and fun shit. I don't know. I do that and I'm sticking with it. I am sacrificing light though. I shoot around 1/200. Probably could go lower, but that's usually just what I go to. I am sacrificing light when I'm shooting at a faster shutter speed, but I think it looks cool. Also because when I'm whip panning around and like quickly panning to things, there isn't a lot of rolling shutter. Rolling shutter is when you move a camera really fast and then everything looks like a trapezoid. So it kind of like, essentially what's happening is the shutter is opening and then closing. And if the shutter's opening and then it like goes, okay, now do a frame of video, you're already moving. So then this is still, and then this is still moving. Does that make sense? So then you've kind of got this weird like disconnect between the bottom half and the top half of the frame. And it looks fucking weird. But if you got a really fast shutter speed, if you move really fast, the shutter's just like, can't capture the top and bottom's movement differently. Shooting at a faster shutter speeds cuts down on rolling shutter, and if you're doing a lot of fast pans, that's useful. I did try a few shows filming with a big light on the top. That didn't really help, I'll be honest, because most of the venues are so dark. When you point like a camera light at somebody, it only lights up the person that you are right in front of. And then you point it at the people at the other side of the stage and it doesn't really light them up anymore. And all it does is piss off everyone in the front row who's just trying to drink a beer and watch this band. Don't put a light on the top of your camera. I mean, you can, whatever. I'm not going to stop you, but you're probably annoying a lot of people. Now, one thing I did have to do was get really good with pulling focus. Because when you're shooting at a really low aperture, like 1.8, 1.4, 1.2, the field of focus, so your depth of field, so when, as you can see behind me, it's not as pronounced, but, you know, Stormtrooper helmet there, it's a little blurry. This lens that I'm shooting on is a 35 millimeter T 1.4, so it's like a f 1.4, 1.2, I don't know, whatever. But if I move like this, I'm out of focus. And then if I move back here, I'm in focus, my hand out of focus, camera out of focus, hands in focus. So the area that is actually in focus is about here. So you have to get really good at pulling focus. Focus assists are built into a lot of cameras. It essentially just highlights what is in focus. So it'll put like, you can use, I know on the Canon cameras, you can choose what color it will highlight it with, which is useful because say you go to a show and all the house lights, they're predominantly red. Your focus highlight is red. Now you can't see shit. So you change that to blue or to yellow so you can differentiate it from the hue of the lights that are in the room. Those are really helpful. But honestly, it just kind of, you just got to use it a lot. Chase your dog, chase your cat, go to a park, find some squirrels, put it to manual focus, chase some stuff. Just rack focus, have them run up to you, rack focus. You will get used to it. And this isn't to say that you're going to just like go to a show and immediately know where is what. Usually the first band is pretty shaky, but also first band, you're the most sober. A good practice is when you first get to a show, get to the side of the stage, focus on the one microphone, look at the other microphone, focus on that. Do that a couple times, then you'll kind of realize when you put your finger there to get up here, your thumb goes to this notch or something, right? You'll kind of get the hang of it pretty quick. Focal length. That's something I toyed with a bunch too. Started out with a 50 millimeter. Really glad I did. It is a wonderful focal length. It is a wonderful portrait lens. The compression is really nice, which means when you're looking at something, the amount of things that are out of focus behind the subject or what you're focused in on look really cool. So if there's like backing lights, they'll be out of focus and you'll get really really nice bokeh behind them. Bokeh being light balls when things are out of focus. And they look really cool when they're in background. So it's easy to focus in on specific things. You can be about 10, 15 feet away and still kind of get a nice just like chest and head and then kind of pan down to the guitar. That's something that I don't like doing, is staying on one thing too long. I want it to be exciting. I want it to be engaging. So you kind of get the hang of how the song's progression is and what's coming next. You kind of can sense when a guitar solo or a drum fill is going to come up, just because we're all monkeys and we're essentially just writing the same 6 songs over and over and over again. So there's a lot of points where you'll be looking at somebody singing a thing and you'll be like, oh, there's probably a guitar solo here. And then you just whip down and then he goes, wow, wow, wow. Sometimes that's not how it goes. And you just look at a guitar and it's not doing anything. I've done that a few times. So, you know, have fun with it. Point it at stuff that you think is cool. Film the crowd. It's not always about just the band. A lot of the time the crowd does more entertaining stuff. There's a lot of drunk people bumping into each other and letting loose. Sometimes there's a lot of funny stuff you can capture that way. And some really emotive stuff. A couple people in crowds that were honestly giving more emotion and intent and were just expressing more than the band. And it was beautiful to see and to capture. A lot of the time I will be, you know, focused in on one thing, waiting for them to kind of finish a verse, and I'll get my focus, and then I'll be watching the guitar player, the drummer, or the crowd or something until something else happens, and then quickly pan over to that. You know, you kind of gotta be ready for what the next shot's gonna be, what the next scene is. Oh, that's another thing you want to invest in. Fucking batteries. Here's a tip. Find 2 of the like name brand batteries. So the one that came with your camera, and then buy another one at like London Drugs or an electronics store or on Amazon. Get the name brand one. They are better. They will last longer. And then just buy a shitload of the whatever cheap shitty ones. The batteries last like an hour, I think I usually get out of them. So that's essentially 2 bands. Most shows are 4 bands maximum. I got like 2 1-hour batteries and then like 3 other ones that nobody fucking knows how long it's gonna last. But keep the batteries in your pockets. Also a problem with a lot of DSLRs and smaller cameras, they can only record for a half an hour. Most of the time that's okay, because most bands only play for a half an hour. But that being said, make sure to pay attention to that, because it's the worst when they're about to do their big final ending and the camera's just like, I stopped recording because I'm an asshole. So a lot of the time I'll keep an eye on how long it's been recording, and if they get in between a song and I've got like 24 minutes, then I'm like, okay, I'll just stop and go from there. So that's my Canon EOS M. That is a bunch of tips on how to record low light in venues. So to recap, shoot with a really fast lens. Depending on your style, shoot with a low shutter speed as you can. If you do a lot of whip pans and you want to move really fast, you're gonna sacrifice some light. Most venues are black stages with black backgrounds with black floors. So really, if you've got a person with a black background, they're gonna stand out. You don't need a ton of light. You do have a lot of room to play in editing afterwards, so you can bump up a lot of the highlights, fuck with the contrast so that the background is even more dark, so that the person in front kind of pops a bit more. Also, maybe turn up or down the saturation, so either make the colors more vibrant or make the colors less vibrant and completely desaturate and shoot black and white. Black and white makes it really easy to shoot in really dark situations, because anything that's dark is just black. Then if something's lit and has color to it, it's bright. So shooting in black and white looks really cool sometimes and can make low light videography work really well. But the main thing is, you don't need to spend $3,000 on a fucking Sony camera. I know that they're great cameras. Don't use autofocus. If you are in a low light situation, autofocus is gonna lose its shit. And it's just gonna focus on the brightest thing, which is usually a light in the top of the ceiling that is not anywhere near anything cool that's happening. Don't use autofocus, it doesn't work. Even if you are putting your thumb and telling it where to focus, it's gonna hunt, it's gonna go back and forth, and when it finally finds it, it's then just gonna be like, cool, I did it. Now I'm gonna fuck off. It always happens. Just get good with manual focus. Just take a weekend, again, follow your dog. Stabilization. I don't stabilize my stuff after the fact. Again, because I shoot at such a high shutter speed, I don't have a lot of motion blur, or if any, to worry about. I shoot with just a monopod, so I put monopod's camera, the monopod just goes into my pocket. Plant it down there, and I've got it kind of close to my body, so that helps with stabilizing shots a lot. Having an extra handle so that you have kind of a wider thing to grip onto. So if you've got your hand on your lens, you've got a big handle thing to grip, and you're kind of close into your body. Not only are you protecting your camera, so when crowd surfers and stage divers go all over the place. Actually, I've had this camera kicked. These lenses are durable as fuck. I've literally had this thing axe kicked 3 times. I've had microphone cables wrapped around it and it go flying. I've had people like swipe punch the microphone. Countless beers have been spilled onto it, spat on it. Wow, good times before COVID. And that wasn't a terrifying statement. Everything's moderately weather sealed. And by weather sealed, I mean bodily fluid and beer sealed. I love this camera. I upgraded it. And am I going to talk about? Yeah, we're going to talk about that in the next video. So hopefully some of those were useful to you. I know when I was looking for tips online, everyone just told me put more light in it, spend more money. I didn't want to do either of those things. My biggest tip is just start doing it. If you have a GoPro, if you have a DSLR, if you have a point and shoot camera, just start filming bands. Eventually you'll get good at it. Tip number 12, suck. Because you're gonna fuck everything up. Even if you research and know all of the things, you're gonna fuck it up. You wanna know why? Because you're gonna be 5 beers deep, you're gonna forget to bring a cable for a microphone, you're gonna forget batteries, you're gonna forget an SD card, you're gonna forget parts to your monopod. Yeah, you're gonna forget a lot of things. And that's okay. You're just gonna have to pay for a fucking cab back home, grab the tiny ass little tripod shoe mount. Those are a bunch of things that I learned in the last couple years filming concerts around Vancouver. I'm Justin. This is 604. And thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button. There's a bunch of videos of bands that I filmed. Some of them you like, and some of them you didn't yet know that you liked. Is that gonna be my tagline? Am I trying to force that? Yeah, that's okay. Anyway, see you in the next video.